Hey guys, today what I thought we'd look at is how to treat the hamstrings and to look at the limitations of using a foam roller to target that muscle and basically look at a different option, a better option to target that part of the body. So the classic way that you would foam roll the hamstring would be to place the foam roll underneath, whether it's at the ischial tuberosity attachment or just above the back of the knee, whichever, and essentially to potentially place your leg over the top and to roll down the back of the leg. Now the limitations to this come from the design of our leg, because in order to get depth of depth of the foam roll into that hamstring, we actually then have to contract the quads. So for an ideal hamstring foam roll, we need to contract the quads. So I would actually be contracting the muscle on the top quite severely to get some length and some tension on here so that the foam roll can go deeper. Unfortunately, that slightly goes against the concept of it being a passive exercise, and then it doesn't help when you're contracting your quads, ties them out a little bit. So it's not ideal, and if we do it like this without contraction, the problem with that is often we don't quite get enough pressure, so it's not very effective. So I've got an alternative. So instead of using the foam roll for the hamstring, try this. You need a hard surface, whether it be a stool, a box, a bench, a table, a worktop, whatever it is, and you need a lacrosse ball. And what you do is you place the lacrosse ball underneath your hamstring. So again, whichever end you want, I'm just going to start right in the belly of the muscle. And then what I would tend to do is I would place both hands either side of the leg so that I can move myself around. So I'm lifting my body off slightly, with putting a bit of body weight through my hands and moving around with the ball, so I'm actually targeting deep into the muscle till I find an area that feels tender. So there, feels quite tender, and then I can just sit down on the box. If I want more pressure, I can push down more, but to be perfectly honest, with a hard surface, this is pretty effective on its own. And so I'd find an area, hold for 30 to 60 seconds, and then move again. So I might just move couple of millimeters. There is also pretty effective for me, and then I would just stay for another 30 to 60 seconds. In this position, the leg is very relaxed, the hamstring is nice and relaxed, but the ball is going to get some real depth right up into the belly of it, so you can find deeper adhesions and make more of an impact on that tissue. What I would say with this is when treating the hamstring, don't go so far up that you end up on the bony ischial tuberosity where the hamstring attaches. Without a doubt, if you stick it there, it will hurt, but that's not necessarily useful, and you can actually start to irritate the tissue attachment insertion there. So come off the bony bit, but certainly up until just before that, all the way down, not behind the knee, but rather just before it. Just as an aside, an additional way to treat this tissue quite effectively is to do something called flossing. So let's say I find an area that is pretty tight, so there's pretty tight, I hold that for 30 to 60 seconds. Now that adhesion should start to ease. If it still feels pretty tough, what I could start to do is floss, so I can with this leg straighten it as far as I can. So I'm now trying to pull that tissue, even though I'm pinning down that adhesion, I'm trying to pull it apart and then back down. And back down. Just simply working through, so really starting to get in, starting to tug through that tissue that's restricted, like so, about 10 times, pretty effective, and already it's actually starting to give a little bit. And again, I might then choose another area, hold for 30 to 60 seconds, and then repeat the same process. Okay, so that's flossing. So that's another add-on, on top of the general trigger point work. Another add-on is the flossing. One more thing, and I'll leave you to it. The adductor magnus that's on the inside, so in the adductor group, functions like a hamstring. So a lot of times we get confused about what we've got, and we've got hamstring pain, and sometimes it can be adductor magnus. So you can also target that on here, simply by, if I start in the hamstring, and then if with my leg, I move it outwards, so I'm now turning it outwards and moving the ball more onto the inside, I can actually get underneath, let me show you this way, so there I'm into the belly of the hamstring. If I turn that leg out, and allow myself to go this way slightly, I can actually get the ball into the belly of my adductor magnus. That's pretty awful. And that's just getting into a little bit between the hamstring and the adductor. Really, really powerful technique. And again, just holding along there, and you can work through that line. So have a little play with that. Replace this instead of the foam roll. Don't bother trying to foam roll your hamstrings. It's not effective. This is the answer on a hard surface.